Hi guys, we're Rocket's Help Desk. I'm Julia,
And I'm Megan.
and today we're with Reshan Richards talking to him about tech in the classroom and his app, Explain Everything.
Hello.
So can you tell us more about how you use tech in the classroom and how your students respond to it?
Sure. I work at a school that has it's a three-campus school that goes all the way from A to grades 12, and we're on three campuses, split up by age. And so the ways that technology is used and the ways that students engage with it and respond um, varies to many degrees, but then is also similar just because of the school's approach. So to give you some overarching background to our philosophy. So I'm the director. I get to focus on teaching, learning, and assessment with tech. Um, but one thing, we're a one-to-one school. We have laptops, grades 4 through 12, and then we have iPads available pre-K through 3, but also in the middle school and the high school, more in a cart or shared-based model. Uh, but kind of a driving principle to all of the tech that we have available to us uh, is that we're trying to provide like the best foundation of choices for our teachers and students. You have to figure out ways to use it every moment, every day, um, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense or isn't in somebody's comfort level. So I think having that approach of this is about equitability and a great range of choices, that kind of drives things. The second thing that guides our thinking is, we try to be very student-centered and thinking about, well, what does this mean for the students' learning, for the students' ability to demonstrate what they're doing or develop their growing. It's not just about making instruction, fancy or polished or more efficient. So in our lower grades, we see a lot of student-created work, and especially with the iPads, even simple things of just like the camera, being able to document learning and document things is one of the more there. So think about 4-year-olds building a great block design, but then actually being able to photograph it really easily, and over time the teacher being able to organize those things. Well, especially where our laptop program begins, our hope is that when the presence of the tech removes the need for a computer lab to a degree, and that every classroom kind of becomes one. But at the same time, if you're walking down our hallways, you might see one class where everybody's got their computers out and is doing something. You walk by another classroom, and the computers are on their desk, but they're also doing something with the iPads. Or you walk by another classroom and they're not doing anything with technology. Or you might walk by another, and they're using their tools and some aren't. And we hope that you see that whole range of things there, because that to us reflects this idea of choice. Um, and then the same goes in our high school, that model kind of flows through there. It's about providing a good platform of hardware and tools, providing good training and information, and hopefully inspirational ideas, but then letting the teachers make the best choices for their students make the best choices for their own learning.
How and when did your district become one-to-one? Was it
Uh,
difficult to become one-to-one school because we're not one-to-one?
so it's an independent school, but we are spread across a large area of the town, and we're currently in year 5 of the program, but we go in kind of 3-year cycles. So it started 5 Septembers ago, and grades 4 through 12 with laptops. And it's interesting because I think many schools that are now starting to do one-to-one are going with the iPad. Maybe it's because of the price point, but also maybe it just seems like a more comfortable entry point than like a full-blown one-to-one laptop program. So I don't know if when this school was starting its program and the iPad was at the point it's at today, what that choice would be. But right now our program, our curricular program is very much deeply anchored in access to the laptops, though, where there used to be desktop stations in our lower grades, now they all have iPad centers. So there, um, we've seen a shift. So right now our one-to-one program is MacBook Air laptops, 13-inch laptops, and then we also, as I said before, have access to iPads in the middle and upper school.
When you started the one-to-one program, was there any backlash, or was everyone very comfortable with the idea of it?
So the schools, part of the institutional culture is to do a lot of research and a lot of planning and communicating before rolling out any major changes. So even before it was implemented, there were several years of piloting with faculty, piloting with students, getting feedback from students, faculty, and parents about um, the ways that we were exploring, the things we were interested in exploring. But then before it actually happened, maybe 2 or 3 years out, the school leadership was pretty firm about saying this is the direction that we're going to go, so that there were no surprises about it. The details of it, of course, were going to shift depending on the current times, but I think that was incredibly important that the school leadership was kind of driving both the communication and also supporting the decisions of people from ed tech, and curriculum. So, there's still always going to be, reservations or concerns about any change that's implemented, whether it's for faculty seeing like, here's something new that's not in my comfort zone, but I see it in other people's comfort zones, and that's a challenge because, what's scary is like, all right, is the nature of my profession changing? And that's a personally, it's a personal challenge to come to that understanding. But then you find that people who are generally good teachers and care about the profession realize that change is part of being a teacher. I think the students were basically all for it. I think, one of the biggest decision points was between, like, because we were standardizing the device as opposed to a bring your own device, it was like, oh, should it be a Chromebook? Should it be a laptop? Should it be a PC that also like does double like tablet / PC? And that was a hard decision point because there were many people who thought, oh, well, being able to write on the tablet would be better suited towards math and science types of note-taking and work. And there's some validity to that, but you can also, with a laptop, still do work on pen and paper and just take a photo of it and store it. We're a big Evernote school, and that's where all our note-taking and archiving kind of happens. So there are ways to do other things, but I don't think you'll ever get 100% everybody happy with every single choice, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and I was wondering how the parents felt. Did you hear anything about that when it was initially starting, or
Yeah.
were they not really involved?
No, parents have continue to be very involved in what we're doing, because we realize when we're providing this device, we are getting, and our intention is to help the students in teaching and learning, or in learning and organization and those kinds of things, really for academic purposes. But everybody knows that technology, our tablet, is also highly recreational and highly social, and that usually takes place outside of school, though depending on the age level, maybe high school, it also happens while in the building. So I think the challenge for everybody is that, one, you're introducing something that to a degree really can't be controlled, despite your best efforts, and two, it's kind of unknown what the landscape is going to be like in 3 or 4 years, or 5 or 10 years. So parents and schools, without necessarily knowing really what things are going to look like. And so it's hard when somebody really wants concrete answers, like, well, what does this mean? What are you going to do? And we have to really say, like, well, we're trying to build our own understanding of this too, but we can at least say with pretty good confidence that we know that, one, the technology is not going anywhere, and that students are more and more, or young people are more and more used to. It's just part of their, and when you kind of start subtracting it, that starts to become unnatural or non-authentic. So when we're trying to say, well, we're trying to prepare people for the world beyond school, well, what does that world look like? And that's a school's responsibility to kind of make those connections.
I know as a student, there can be a lot of frustration when you're using technology. Do you think that inspired you to create your app, Explain Everything, or what was the inspiration in that?
Yeah, so the inspiration around that was, I think it was less around the idea of frustration and trying to create tutorials or training materials, but more around um, thinking about like how can technology reveal more about how people, um, and then or capture those things that are otherwise difficult to capture. So I always say from a teacher perspective, when you're working with a student, the best way to know where a student is in their learning is to sit down and talk to them and have that, have a conversation about what's going on, and build that relationship. But then when you're in a class with a lot of students and you're limited by time and resources, it's hard to replicate that kind of thing. So I was just curious about, well, how can we use technology to, even if it's a fraction of those moments, to capture them? And so that's where the idea of using the tool in this way came out. And it just worked out well when the iPad was first released that I was starting to really get interested in this. So the timing could have been more perfect. And so I ended up collaborating with two people who are still, who are basically, it's me and Bart and Pyotr, who are the three co-founders of the app. And we've been working together for over 3 years now. And I think because we've just kept our focus on making something that's flexible and isn't necessarily just for one purpose or another, that we've seen it being used in a lot of interesting ways, maybe not just the ways that I originally envisioned.
So, how do you like personally use it, like in your when you're teaching your class and your students?
Yeah, so let me try to switch to my screen here. Hopefully this works. And tell me, do you see my iPad?
Mm-hmm.
And do you see me writing hi?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I was doing quite a bit last year, especially, so I was teaching a 5th grade math class last year. So sometimes, often I just do goofy things like doodles, but because it's fun to just draw stick figures. Um, uh, Sometimes it was helpful, like for example, if I was teaching a short division or how to do like the short division algorithm, I might use this tool instead of my whiteboard or chalkboard to say, like, well, it did a couple of things. One, I didn't have to have my back facing the class. But two, like, so right now I'm recording, and I could say, right, I'm trying to teach you this algorithm for solving, long digit or multi-digit number divided by a single-digit number. And one thing you do is, well, how many 7s go into 4? None. 4 things still left over. 6. 1 thing left over. Hopefully you kind of understand what I'm doing here. This is elementary school math. Okay, so here, but now what I've done is instead of just being able to model how I did it and project it, I've also got this video recording of it that I could easily post to my course website and say, for future reference, here's that. But that's very teacher-centered. That's me doing instructional delivery. So the other thing that I would do, I would try to do this just like once per unit, not every day, just every couple of weeks. I would give the students a problem, and hopefully something a little more than just solving an algorithm. Of course, I can't think of one right now. But imagine I just said, here's 2 squares, and I would find a nice PDF. My handwriting is terrible. I don't even know what this problem is. They're just 2 shapes here. But what I would do is I'd provide a problem and tell the students to create a response and hit record and show me what they were doing, with the expectation that it wouldn't be perfect, but it would give me a better sense than if I just gave them a sheet of paper. So that became kind of a regular part of the practice. So let me show you. I have some on here. These are all various projects, but like, okay, so here's one of my students. So he did a 15-minute response to a problem, the last 12 of which were just him signing his name over and over again, because he could. But it was like he'd like to turn the thing upside down, and it's just kind of crazy. But anyway, it tells me a lot about his creativity. But it was just a different type of way to kind of collect student work. Let me go back to myself. Oh, did my iPad leave?
Yeah.
Oh no. Did you get to see any of that student's crazy problem solution? Hold on, let me get back. I'm using Reflector to share my screen. Let me just quit it. Have you ever used that?
Reflector.
All right, here we go. So I'm using Reflector to share my iPad to my computer, and then in the Google Hangout, you can do the screen share and choose the. And so I'm choosing to share my iPad screen, which is supposed to be projecting, but it is not. Oh well. Technical help. I need it. Except I have to call to myself. All right. Well, now that you have my face again, I can answer other questions. Like iPad comes back to life.
You work outside your district at other schools using tech, or just in your school?
Just in my school. I mean, I present at a lot of conferences and do other types of like just general sharing. But my job is here at my school.
And when you're presenting at those conferences, do they ask you to come, or are you applying to come?
I get a mix of both. I think there's some where just historically, for many years I've always applied and done them. And then there's some other ones where somebody else is, that I've met or has seen me present was like, oh, would you be interested in coming and doing something here? That happens too, which is really nice. I always feel honored. But it just all depends. Like MassCUE, where you guys, Shelley Chamberlain, who's the, I guess, executive director, she, when I was doing graduate school, I interned for her like 10 years ago. And then at another conference, we ran into each other when I was presenting, and then she's like, oh, you have to come speak at MassCUE. So that's how that worked out. So it's just funny how those things happen.
What is the goal of presenting at those conferences? Is it to get more people to use your app, or what do you think your main motivation is?
Oh, that's a really good question. I genuinely like sharing. I know that my own best personal learning comes from going to these things and hearing different perspectives, different ideas from other people who are outside of my context. So I try to look at it as like giving back in that way, that I can share my experiences and perspectives. I never try to just do a sales pitch or anything like that. In fact, I very much try not to, and many of the places wouldn't let me, even if I tried. But I hope I can speak about those things and kind of let the tool speak for itself.
I know that like when we went to MassCUE to see you, like I really liked that you were showing us how to use the app instead of like someone else. Like you're the person who like created it, so like I enjoyed that like you were the one who got to like show us how to use it. And like my favorite thing was like how you can make something spin by itself.
Yes, and there'll be more interesting little animation things that you'll be able to do in the near future. I have to keep some of them a little bit secret, but the setting rotation thing is just the beginning of really, really goofy stuff.
What makes you want to keep adding things to the app? Is it people asking, or do you just find things that you want to add?
It's a mix of both. I would say a huge chunk comes from people using it and saying, could you do this, could you do that? And we have to prioritize saying, like, can we do this? And how long would it take? And how much would it cost? And then some of the things are stuff that just comes to our mind, and we're like, well, let's add this to our list. And we're constantly reprioritizing on that. So it's a good mix of both. But so many of the things, like even just recently, for a long time, people have wanted a redo button, so that if you like accidentally hit undo, you can do redo. And I can't share my screen, but let me see if you can So So oops, I just hit undo. So like you couldn't see that, but I drew a line and then hit undo. But now a little redo button popped up. So if I want that line to come back, I just hit redo, and it came back. So sometimes if like you're very aggressively hitting the undo button, you might go one step too far. At least now you could do redo. But that's, this is where like when you develop something that's complex, like the undo button really is only for when you're like adding stuff to the stage. But like while you're recording, it doesn't like undo your recording. You know what I mean? So it's really for like things on the stage, not the media aspect. Though you can always undo your recording by just rewinding and redoing it.
And how do people get in contact with you if they want to add things to the app? Do they approach you at conferences? Do they email you?
Yeah, like they email the support, they contact us via Twitter, see us in person, and um, any of those methods work. We generally hear about it. Sometimes we like to read this other stuff that people post. Sometimes we'll see something, that somebody is like, I wish X, Y, Z, but they've just done it in a blog post. And sometimes we'll reach out and be like, well, what do you mean by that? How could we make this happen? So we get the whole mix. One of the unfortunate things about Twitter is that you're limited in how many characters you can have in the username. So we couldn't fit explain everything into a Twitter handle. So it's like the word explain and then everything, except there's no second E or I. So it's like EXPLAIN EVRYTHNG. So it's hard to find, but people somehow do.
How long have you been in touch with the other creators of the app?
Gosh, it's now been over 4 years. It was October 2010 that I wrote a blog post about something else that they had created, and that was our first contact. And then about 5 months later, we'd kind of settled an agreement and decided we were going to build this new thing together. And then only a few months after that, in August 2011, is when the app was released. But then we always tell people we actually met in person or sat in the same room until almost 3 years after that, which was last summer.
How did that work with collaborating if you've never met? Like, was it difficult, or were you all tech savvy enough to collaborate?
I mean, we used a lot of collaborative platforms like video conferencing, Google Docs, shared document stuff, Skype, whatever we could do to be together without necessarily needing to physically be together. But you're negotiating a 6-hour time difference, so it also introduces new challenges. But it worked, and I think because we were lucky that we all had a similar mindset, and you have to leap in with a certain amount of trust with that kind of thing. But it worked out, I think, just because we're just nice people.
So after not meeting them for so long, was it like weird to finally see them in person, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, we knew because we knew what each other looked like. But the thing that you never get from the video conference is how tall people are. So you're like, oh, wait a minute, you're much taller than I thought you would be, and then that was always interesting. So that was pretty funny.
How did you meet? Did they come here? Did you go there?
We met at ISTE when we met up in person for the first time. It was down at ISTE in Atlanta, end of June this past summer. It was just a big conference, and we were doing a couple of things there. So we were like, this makes sense to connect. You guys should present there.
Atlanta. It's very far.
Well, next summer it's in Philly. Less far.
It was really nice talking with you today, Reshan.
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Go back to the...
Thank you.